I'm Lauren with Pack Hacker, and in this video we're taking a detailed look at the Roark Accomplice Missing Link 42-liter bag, which I've been testing for the last 2 weeks. If you found this video helpful, hit subscribe so we can keep making content to help you travel smarter. Let's dive in. In terms of materials, this bag is pretty simple. So across the board here, we have 100% tarpaulin PVC. So it has a bit of a crunchy sound to it. You can it just sounds like that all the time. It's very loud when you are actually using this roll top design. But in terms of features on the outside here, it seems like there's a lot going on. And I think that's mostly as account of all of the kind of dangling straps that are left over. But we have this daisy chain webbing on the front, and this actually functions for these additional modular items, which I'll cover in a little bit. But then we've got some water bottle pockets. We have one on either side. This is an 18-ounce Hydro Flask. You can see it fits in there nice and snug. It feels very secure. I was able to fit a 40-ounce water bottle in here actually, but the larger the water bottle, the more it's going to cut into the actual space of the bag. So it's just gonna kind of push down into that material. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. The bigger you go, the more you might start to impact the internal storage. On the sides as well, we have these two little loops here, and these are on both the top and the bottom. They're pretty easy to adjust in terms of making them bigger or smaller. And this is if you want to attach larger gear. So that's nice if you have like a hiking pole or something like that. You can also stick the lower half of it down into this water bottle and then use the top to cinch it down. It's kind of up to you. One thing that I did notice with this is that it can come out completely. So you do have to really be careful, I guess, when you're trying to find that adjustment. And also they just kind of get in the way. I found it to be a little bit clunky, especially with this top one being so close to the roll top closure. It just kind of felt like I was fighting against it all the time. So I didn't find myself using it a ton. You can, I guess, technically remove them entirely. All you have to do is feed this out and then just loop it back under this little spot here. So that is always an option as well. So looking at the back panel here, there are a fair amount of straps all around it, but the only strap keepers to be found are on this hip belt here. So this hip belt is actually removable. You just take this back half and you feed this through, and then you're able to take it off, which is a great feature if you don't find yourself using a hip belt a ton. I found that even with this buckle being a little bit larger, it's a Woojin buckle, I just cinched it really tight against this back panel and it worked really well for me. Didn't really feel it on my back. That's just kind of me personally, but you can remove it if you want to. We have a sternum strap on a sliding rail. This side did actually come off. The only reason I caught it is because I heard it hit the ground. Otherwise, I think I would have just lost it entirely. These are usually pretty secure, so I think it was just kind of a fluke of it kind of jostling off, but it is nice and easy to adjust on this rail system here. Then we have two D-rings and then loops here as well to attach gear. So kind of removing these buckles to get a look at the back panel. The back panel itself, this pocket we'll cover in a second, but this mesh it just adds a little bit of comfort. But if you do have stuff in here and it's poking out, you definitely can feel it on your back. This shoulder strap, this is like a foamy mesh. You can see the holes in there and that adds extra ventilation. They're also contoured for extra comfort. I found these straps to actually be really, really comfortable. I just feel like they kind of add a decent level of cushion for how much you pack in this bag. It's not a ton, so if you're gonna be carrying this for a really long time, you have a lot of heavy gear, that's something to keep in mind, but I did like that. At the very bottom here, we also have a carry handle for easy grabs. You can kind of utilize it with the top carry handle, but the top carry handle does sort of dangle down here unless it's cinched together at the top, so that's something to keep in mind as well. One of the most noticeable things about this harness system for me is that this hip belt or waist belt is at my waist versus at my hips. So in terms of actually lifting weight of this pack off of me personally, it doesn't really work. It sits a little bit too high. For me, it would have been a little bit better if it were like a couple inches down just to help lift up. So I did mostly keep this cinched actually against the backpack, but your mileage may vary depending on your body type. Another thing is that you can kind of see it has like a little bit of like a saggy look to it, not because of the gear inside, but because of this roll top and of the carry handle. So everything is just kind of like dangling off of this pack. I think aesthetically, for me personally, not my favorite thing. But in terms of comfort for like shoulder straps and this back panel, it does fit very comfortably with all the gear that I keep inside, especially for being a 42-liter pack. Just mostly this waist belt that's not doing too much for it, and then the carry handles as well that can get in the way a little bit. In terms of secondary pockets, this bag keeps it pretty simple. There's just two on the outside here. So we have this front zippered pocket. This is the only zippered pocket. Well, I guess that's a lie. There is a zippered pocket on the back, but this is one of two zippered pockets on this. It's YKK, and it has extra waterproofing on the front of it here on its seam. So what this bag really excels in is its waterproof materials. It's not a waterproof bag. Water can still get inside if it were to be submerged. But I did get stuck in some pretty gnarly rain with this, and everything just kind of rolled off. A large part of that is because of like the tape seams too. Everything, across the board kind of helps keep water out. And this pocket is no different. So this here, I just have, my phone, wallet, AirPods are in here too. Basically really tiny gear I like to keep in here because it's quickest to access, and also because the inside is just basically a giant pit, which we'll get into shortly. But this is also where you would put that modular gear. So I have one of their options here. This is their 4-liter, I believe. And so what this does is you just unhook this little bit here, kind of get lost in it. There we go. And then you would slide it through and then rehook it on. So I'm not going to do it for the sake of time here, but this hooks onto that daisy chain webbing on the front. They have a couple different sizes that you can choose from if you like that modularity. They also have larger bags that you can use as well to kind of expand on all of your storage options. So that is a really great shout if that's something that if you're into, if you like that modularity. That goes right in the front there. You can't access this pocket when you do have that locked in, but granted, you have so many pockets and storage options on this anyway that it sort of makes this not necessary. Or you can use it as an extra security pocket. But if you want an actual security pocket without any modularity, there is this back panel pocket as well. So this here is designed to fit a passport, so it's not too deep in there. And then you can see there's an extra little pocket in here, and that's for storing an air tag. So you can kind of see it's just like there's like a seam almost where it splits, and then you can stick your smart tracker in there. So what's nice about this is that this stays against your back at all times, obviously unless you set the actual backpack down, but this makes it a little bit more secure to keep your documents where they're easier to access, because like I mentioned, this roll top can be a little bit finicky to get in and out of, and also it's just kind of a big black pit in there, but it's not so out in the open and obvious as if you were to put it on the front of the bag. So that's a really great shout in terms of security if you're using this as your primary travel bag. Before we get into the actual main compartment here, there are a couple things I want to mention on the outside. So the first thing I want to talk about is this actually cinching down system we have over here. You can see that this buckle is really, really close to, this is that like tie down strap system with the top and the bottom. And those are really, really close together. And what I found happened with me here was that when I was actually trying to like secure this main compartment, I was like fighting against this buckle all the time. There is some strap keeper on this buckle here that goes to the roll top, but there is no strap keeper on this little like tie down strap over on this side here. And so I just felt like the strap and the buckle and everything was just like, there was a lot going on in this specific section over here, and it's on both sides of the bag. So just kind of a nuisance thing for me. If you remove these, then it's not that big of a deal. But if you like to keep them on because you like to be able to secure your stuff at any time, then that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I want to mention is this carry handle here. So you can't actually access this main compartment without like detaching these carry handles from each other. But if you do that, so this is a pretty strong Velcro. If you do that, nice and easy, kind of opens it so you can easily get into the main compartment, but then you just sort of have these dangling straps here. So if you were to kind of lift this bag up here and leave that like to just its own devices, it sort of dangles into this harness system. I found myself just sort of dealing with it because the act of going and putting these carry handles together every single time I wanted to like roll or unroll my bag was a little bit more of a nuisance than actually just leaving this back there for quick trips. That's definitely a personal thing, but you do have to actually do something with those carry handles because they are a little bit on the long side. So going into the actual main compartment here, you can see that this is pretty loosely rolled, but that's not actually how I rolled it. So if I unbuckle these, I can show you what happens for me. So leaving these unbuckled, usually I'd be doing this, I'd have the actual bag like on the ground or something so I can use like gravity a little bit more, but for the sake of visuals here, I just have it on the table. But the same thing happens regardless. So I will like roll this basically as tight as I can get it, as many times as I need to. You do have flexibility just based off of how much gear is in there, but then I have, you know, these buckles here. I'll get it buckled in, and you can see that like I have an elbow on this side here, and that's to keep it from unrolling, because if I were to leave that, it just unrolls essentially. So let me re-secure that down there, and then you can do the other buckle and lock that down. But even with that, you can see it just unrolled a little bit. And so this material just feels so slick that it doesn't really hold its roll really well. Even if I start to really cinch it down, none of my gear, like it didn't ever open for me and like expose the backpack, like in terms of the main compartment, but it was just a bit of a nuisance for me. And if I really tightened it down, the materials got a little bit like crinkly and weird looking up at the top. So that's something that I didn't super love. And then this main compartment here is just a big like black pit essentially. So you can see my gear all the way down at the bottom. It comes to about here with everything that I have inside, which is just my laptop, some packing cubes. You can also use their modular gear or their modular storage as internal storage if that's something that you like. But moving that off to the side, there are no additional pockets or anything on the inside here. So you really need to rely on your like packing cubes or pouches or things like that. I also found that, you know, when it's standing up, it's really tall. And so I found myself needing to use a flashlight most of the time to actually find my gear inside. So that's definitely something to keep in mind with as big as this is and as dark as it is on the inside, to really utilize pouches. So there you have it, the Roark Accomplice Missing Link 42-liter backpack. Thanks for keeping it here at Pack Hacker, your guide to smarter travel, and we'll see you in the next one.